My name is Margaret Johnson. I am 42 years old, and what I am about to share completely transformed the way I see marriage, family, and, above all, the value a woman must give herself. Before I begin, if this story touches your heart, please give me a like and tell me in the comments from which country you are watching. One day, I was in my office reviewing the quarterly financial statements when I received a WhatsApp message that would change everything. It was from my sister-in-law, Emily Johnson, my husband Robert's younger sister. The text was short but devastating. "Margaret, I know it may be uncomfortable, but I need to ask you something. Why did you decide not to come to my wedding? Robert told us you preferred to stay working that weekend." I froze, reading those lines again and again. I felt my blood run cold, and the 15 years of marriage I had built trembled like a house of cards. I had never decided to skip that wedding. I didn't even know the date had already been confirmed. To help you understand the magnitude of that betrayal, I need to tell you how my story with Robert began. It all started 17 years ago when we both worked at Anderson Consulting, in downtown Chicago. I was a project manager, freshly graduated with my master's degree, full of energy and with many goals ahead of me. Robert was the star accountant in the finance department, 3 years older than me, with honey-colored eyes that captivated me from the very first moment. Our relationship felt like it was taken straight from a romantic movie. He was attentive, thoughtful. Every Friday he brought me flowers and left little love notes hidden on my desk. I clearly remember our first date. He took me to an Italian restaurant in the most exclusive part of the city, and while we shared a bottle of red wine, he spoke to me about his dreams. He wanted a traditional family, but at the same time, he longed for a strong and independent woman by his side. That night he held my hand and said, "You are exactly the kind of woman I always dreamed of marrying, intelligent, ambitious, beautiful. I don't want a wife who depends on me, I want a partner." How could I not fall in love with someone who seemed to value who I was? During the 2 years of our relationship, Robert was a constant support. He celebrated my achievements as if they were his own, and when I confessed that I dreamed of someday having my own business in the hotel industry, he was the first to encourage me. Robert's family, on the other hand, was a completely different story. His mother, Mrs. Johnson, was over 60 years old and had dedicated her entire life to the home, raising her 3 children, Robert, the eldest, Michael, the middle one, and Emily, the youngest, 15 years younger than him. From the very first family dinner, I felt her disapproval like invisible daggers piercing my back. "So, you work in the same company as my son," she said in a tone loaded with condescension. "Don't you think that when you have children, someone should stay at home to take care of them, as God intended?" Robert squeezed my hand under the table, a gesture I interpreted as support, though now I think it was more of a warning for me not to answer back. Naive and in love, I smiled and replied, "Well, Mrs. Johnson, we believe we can balance family and work. There are many options today." The dinner continued with uncomfortable glances and passive-aggressive comments about modern women and how, in her time, wives knew their place. Michael, the middle brother, barely spoke during the whole evening. Emily, who was only 12 at the time, looked at me with a mix of curiosity and admiration, which gave me hope that I would have at least one ally in that family. A year later, we got married in a small but elegant ceremony. At that time, I had inherited a significant sum from my paternal grandmother, one of the first women entrepreneurs of her era. With that money, plus my savings and a bank loan, I bought a small boutique hotel in downtown Chicago. The place was in ruins and needed a complete renovation, but I saw the potential. Robert knew perfectly well about my plans. He helped me with the numbers, reviewed the business plan, and accompanied me to several meetings with contractors. However, he never mentioned anything to his family about that investment. "It's better to keep business separate from family," he would tell me. "You know how my mother is, she'd think you're wasting money we should save for our children." I agreed. In the end, it was my project, my dream, my investment. The first 5 years of marriage I devoted entirely to building the hotel. Those were very difficult times, complicated permits, unreliable contractors, employees who had to be trained from scratch. Robert was supportive in those years. When I came home exhausted, with swollen feet and tears running down my makeup, he welcomed me with a glass of wine and words of encouragement. "You're going to make it, my love. You are the strongest woman I know." I named the hotel the Hope Boutique Hotel, in honor of my grandmother. We inaugurated it exactly 10 years ago. The first months were tough, low occupancy and mixed reviews. Little by little, with an obsession for detail and impeccable service, the place began to gain fame. First, some local travel blogs wrote about it, then tourism magazines, and later international influencers arrived. By the third year, we had already won our first award as the best boutique hotel in the city. By the fifth year, we appeared in all the major travel guides, and by the seventh I had to reject offers from international chains that wanted to buy my little treasure. But while my professional life flourished, my marriage began to wither, so slowly I didn't notice until it was too late. Robert's compliments turned into subtle criticism. "Don't you think you spend too much time at the hotel?" Michael's children asked about their aunt, who almost never went to family gatherings. And my mother-in-law repeated that a woman who works that much must always have something to hide. I did my best to balance everything. I adjusted my schedule to attend Sunday lunches at Mrs. Johnson's house, where I inevitably ended up helping in the kitchen while the men watched football. I listened for hours to her complaints about how hard life was, even though she lived in a house bought by her children and had never worked outside the home. On one occasion, while we peeled potatoes for lunch, she said, "Margaret, I don't understand why you insist on that little job of yours. Robert earns well. You could live comfortably on his salary. A woman should dedicate herself to building a home, not waste time in offices." With all the calm I could muster, I replied, "It's more than a job, Mrs. Johnson. It's my business, it's my life project." She snorted with disdain. "Life project? In my day, a woman's project was her family, that's why marriages lasted. Now, with so much independence and women's liberation, just look at the world." Robert never defended me in those conversations. When I confronted him in private, he always had an excuse. "You know my mother, she's from another generation. It's not worth arguing with her." Robert always said it wasn't worth arguing with his mother, that she didn't mean any harm. But the real breaking point in our relationship came exactly 2 years ago, when the Hope Boutique Hotel was one of the 50 best boutique hotels in North America. That recognition was monumental, the reward for a decade of relentless work. To celebrate, I organized a dinner at the hotel's restaurant. I invited my entire team, the investors from Anderson Investments Group, and my closest friends. Robert arrived late, left early, and during the toast, while I was thanking every person who made that dream possible, I saw him focused on his phone with a frown on his face. When we finally got home that night, I asked him, "Is everything okay?" Without looking up, he answered, "My mother is upset. She says it's humiliating that her daughter-in-law appears in magazines flaunting her money while her son goes unnoticed." Flaunting my money? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him, "Robert, this is my work, my effort. Can't you just be proud of me?" He replied, "Of course I'm proud of you," but his voice didn't match those words. "I just think you should be more discreet. Not the whole family needs to know about your successes." That night, we slept in separate rooms for the first time in our marriage. Even though we later returned to the same bed, something fundamental had broken between us. My relationship with Emily, on the other hand, was completely different. She had grown up looking at me as an example. When she turned 18, she asked me for advice on what career to study. When she graduated with a degree in business administration, I was the first person she called. And when she got her first job, we celebrated with a bottle of champagne on the terrace of the Hope Boutique Hotel. 6 months ago, Emily called me, excited. "Margaret, I'm getting married." After 3 years of dating, David finally proposed. Her words were pure joy mixed with nerves. Then she added, "I want my wedding to be at the Hope Boutique Hotel. I know it's an exclusive place and the waiting list is more than a year, but you're my favorite sister-in-law. Well, my only sister-in-law, but also my favorite. Do you think you can make an exception for me?" Of course, I agreed. Not only that, I offered her a very large family discount and personally got involved in the planning. We spent entire afternoons reviewing menus, choosing flowers, and designing the seating arrangement. Emily was radiant, and I felt honored to be by her side in such a special moment. During one of those meetings, she surprised me with a personal question. "Margaret, can I ask you something? Why don't you and Robert have children? You've been married for 15 years. My mom always says it's because you don't want to, but I never dared to ask you directly." I felt a knot in my throat. The truth was hard. In the first 5 years of marriage, we tried to have children. We went through fertility treatments, multiple disappointments, and 2 miscarriages that broke my heart. In the end, the doctors determined the problem was the quality of Robert's sperm. He refused to consider other options like adoption or a donor. He said, "If the child can't be mine biologically, I'd rather not have children," and that was the last time we ever talked about it. To his family, however, he told a different story, that I was the one who didn't want children, that I was too focused on my career. And I, out of love and respect for his pride, never contradicted him. In the end, I answered Emily. "It's complicated. Sometimes things just don't turn out the way you expect." She held my hand tenderly. "I'm sorry if I was indiscreet. It's just that I'm sure you'd be a wonderful mother and also an incredible aunt. When David and I have children, I want you to be the godmother." Those words moved me to tears. In that family that so often made me feel like an outsider, Emily was my only refuge. The following weeks passed between the wedding preparations and the hotel's daily routine. Robert seemed distant, but I thought it was because of work. He told me about an important project and said he would be late several nights. I didn't suspect a thing. After 15 years of marriage, you learn to give your partner space. Until that WhatsApp message from Emily arrived. With trembling fingers, I replied, "What are you talking about, Emily? I never decided not to go to your wedding. I didn't even know the date had been confirmed." Her response was immediate. "What do you mean?" "Margaret, the wedding is this Saturday. Robert confirmed both of you a month ago, but last week he called to say only he would attend because you had work commitments you couldn't cancel." I felt as if the world had stopped. The wedding was in 5 days, and I knew nothing about it. My own husband had cancelled my invitation to his sister's wedding, celebrated at my own hotel, without even consulting me. I wrote back to Emily. "Can we talk on the phone? This is very strange." She called instantly. Her voice sounded worried and confused. "Margaret, what's going on?" Trying to stay calm, I answered. "That's exactly what I'd like to know. Robert never told me the date was confirmed. The last time we talked, he said you were still deciding between 2 options." "Margaret, that was 2 months ago. We sent the invitations 6 weeks ago. Robert picked us up in person because he said he wanted to surprise you with it." Surprise. That word hit me like a death knell. My husband had deliberately hidden the invitation to his own sister's wedding. I asked Emily to tell me exactly what Robert had said when he canceled my attendance. She took a deep breath and answered with regret. "It pains me to repeat it, but he said you had argued fiercely about your work, that you were obsessed with the hotel, and that you had made it clear your work was more important than family. He even mentioned that, although you knew the wedding would be at the Hope Boutique Hotel, you had scheduled a corporate event that same weekend and couldn't cancel it." I felt those lies hitting me like stones. There was no event scheduled for that date. In fact, I had blocked in advance all the options Emily gave me to make sure the hotel would be available only for her. I told her firmly, "None of that is true. We haven't argued, there's no corporate event, and never, listen to me carefully, never would I put work above your wedding. You are like a sister to me. Emily remained silent, and although she didn't say it, we both thought the same thing. What was Robert planning? Finally, I asked her. Do me a favor, for now don't tell Robert we talked. I need to understand what's happening before I confront him. I needed to understand what was happening before confronting him. Margaret, do you think? Emily said with a trembling voice. No, it can't be. What is it? I replied. Do you think Robert might be? No, forget it. That's crazy. But I knew perfectly well what she meant. The same suspicion was forming in my mind. Could it be possible Robert planned to attend the wedding with another woman? After hanging up, I stayed in my office, sitting at my desk, what seemed like hours though only minutes passed. I mentally reviewed every detail from the past months, looking for signs I had overlooked, the late arrivals, the excuses about important projects, the emotional distance, the lack of intimacy I had attributed to stress. I grabbed my phone and checked the shared calendar we had. Saturday was blank, no note about the wedding. I checked his social media, something I hadn't done in months because I trusted him blindly. His last post was from 3 weeks earlier, a generic sunset photo with a motivational phrase about new beginnings. New beginnings. I decided I needed more information before facing him. I called Linda Brown, my personal assistant and right hand at the Hope Boutique Hotel. Linda, I need you to do me a very discreet favor. Of course, Mrs. Johnson. What do you need? Check the reservations for this Saturday. I want the details of the Johnson family wedding. I heard her typing quickly. Here it is. Wedding of Emily Johnson and David Smith. Main hall, 150 guests. Ceremony at 5 in the afternoon, reception at 7. Everything confirmed. Wait, there's a note. Mr. Robert Johnson called last week to change the guest list. He cancelled one place and added another name. I felt my heart stop. What name did he add? Jessica Miller. He placed her at the same table with him, in the seat that was originally yours, Mrs. Johnson. I knew that name. She was the new finance manager at Robert's company. A woman in her 30s I had met at the Christmas party. I remembered her well because Robert introduced her with unusual enthusiasm, and because she looked me up and down with a smile that never reached her eyes. Linda, is there anything else I should know? She hesitated for a moment. I'm not sure if it's relevant, but Mr. Johnson also reserved one of our suites for that weekend. Which suite? The small bridal suite. He said it was for a relative coming from out of town. And? The reservation is under J. Miller, and it's only for one person, from Friday to Sunday. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place with brutal clarity. My husband had not only excluded me from his sister's wedding but planned to attend with another woman, for whom he had even reserved a suite in my own hotel. Linda, I need another favor. Yes, ma'am. Check the security cameras from the last few weeks. I want to know if Robert has been here without my knowledge. Mrs. Johnson, is everything all right? No, Linda, nothing is all right. But it will be. Do me that favor and call me as soon as you find anything. I hung up and collapsed into my chair. The pain was turning into a cold and calculated fury. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of enduring his family's contempt, of sacrificing my desire to be a mother to protect his ego, of building an empire while he felt overshadowed by my success, and this was how he repaid me. The phone rang. It was Linda. Mrs. Johnson, I reviewed the recordings. Mr. Johnson was here 3 times in the last 2 weeks. He always entered through the side door, the one that leads to the parking lot, and he was always accompanied by the same woman. Dark-haired, tall, around 30 years old. Yes, it matches Jessica Miller. In one of the recordings they look very close. I understand, Linda. Save all those recordings. And one more thing, cancel the suite reservation, mark it as void due to non-payment. But ma'am. Do it. And remember, this stays between us. Of course, Mrs. Johnson. I'm very sorry. Don't be sorry. Just help me do what I have to do. That night, Robert arrived home at 10, as he had in recent weeks. I was in the living room with a glass of wine, pretending to watch television. "Hi, love," he said, giving me a superficial kiss on the cheek. "How was your day?" The hypocrisy of that greeting turned my stomach, but I stayed calm. "Fine, the usual." "And yours? How's that important project going?" "Exhausting," he replied, loosening his tie. "But it'll be over this weekend. Finally, I'll be able to rest a little." This weekend. The wedding was that weekend, and he acted as if nothing was happening. "That's good," I said, taking a sip of wine. "Do you have any plans?" I saw a flicker on his face, guilt, nerves. "Nothing special. Maybe go to the club with Michael." "And you?" "I have to work," I lied, just to play along. "There's an important event at the hotel." "Always working," he sighed dramatically. "Sometimes I think that hotel is more important to you than your family." The irony was so bitter I almost choked on my wine. He, who was deceiving me and pushing me away from his family, accused me of not valuing family. "Robert," I said, looking him in the eyes, "is there something you want to tell me?" "About what?" he answered defensively. "I don't know, you tell me." "Something about your family, maybe an important event?" I saw him swallow hard. "No, not that I know of." "Are you sure?" "Emily has been very quiet lately." I thought maybe there was news about the wedding. "Oh, the wedding," he relaxed visibly, thinking he had dodged the blow. "Yes, I think they already set a date, but I don't remember when." You know how I am with dates. Every lie was another nail in my coffin. I decided to keep playing along. "We should ask them. I suppose they'll want the reception at the Hope Boutique Hotel." "I'd have to block the date." "I don't think that's necessary," he answered quickly. "I think they're considering other places. Your hotel is too expensive, even with a family discount." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Too expensive?" "Robert, I offered to do it for free." "Emily is your sister." "Well, you know my mother, she doesn't like owing favors." Of course Mrs. Johnson was behind all of this, but I decided to keep that card to myself. "You're right," I said, standing up. "Your mother has always been very proud. I'm going to bed, I'm tired." "Aren't you having dinner?" "I'm not hungry." "Good night, Robert." I went upstairs to the bedroom, but not to sleep. I had a lot to plan. The next 2 days I spent gathering evidence and preparing every detail. Linda kept me informed of all Robert's movements at the hotel. We discovered that he had paid for Jessica Miller's suite with our joint credit card, which was not only a betrayal but also a shameless financial abuse. I also did something I never thought I would. I hired a private investigator. I needed to know how far this betrayal went. The results were devastating, but not surprising. Robert and Jessica had been in a relationship for 6 months. They met in hotels, in restaurants outside the city, and even at her apartment. The investigator also found out something else: Jessica was married. Her husband was a businessman who traveled frequently, which made her encounters with Robert easier. She was a woman who knew exactly what she was doing, destroying a marriage while keeping her own intact. But the hardest blow came when the private investigator showed me photos of Robert entering a jewelry store. He had bought a diamond necklace, quite expensive, and paid for it in cash. In 15 years of marriage, he had never given me a diamond. He always said they were ostentatious and that he preferred more meaningful gifts. Apparently, for Jessica Miller, ostentation was worth it. On Thursday night, just 2 days before the wedding, I received an unexpected call. It was Mrs. Johnson. Her voice sounded even colder than usual. "We need to talk about your behavior." "My behavior?" I replied with a neutral tone, though inside I was boiling with indignation. "Emily told me you called her to complain about not being invited to her wedding. It's the height of your shamelessness. First you reject the invitation because of your work, and now you want to cause drama to ruin her special day." "Mrs. Johnson, I think there's a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," she interrupted. "I always knew you weren't the right woman for my son. A woman who puts her work above her family doesn't deserve to be called a wife. Robert is a saint for putting up with you all these years." "A saint?" I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. I was about to spill the truth, to tell her what her saintly son was doing, but I held back. She didn't deserve to be the first to know. That revelation I would save for another moment. "You're right, Mrs. Johnson. I'm not the wife Robert deserves. I'm glad you finally recognize it. I hope that after this insult to the family, Robert will make the right decisions about his future." "I'm sure those decisions will come very soon," I answered with feigned calm. "Have a good night." I hung up before she could reply. That same night, Robert came home earlier than usual. He looked nervous, anxious. He poured himself a whiskey, then another, and finally sat across from me in the living room. "Margaret, we need to talk." "I'm listening," I answered, pretending to be calm even though my heart was pounding. "This weekend I need space. I think we should spend a few days apart to think about our marriage." The audacity of the man was impressive. He wanted me to leave so he could take his mistress to the wedding without any problems. "Think about our marriage?" I repeated. "Is there something specific that worries you? I feel like we've lost our connection. You're always at the hotel. I'm always working. We're like two strangers sharing the same house." "I understand," I answered slowly. "And what do you suggest? Maybe you could go to that spa you like so much and take a few days for yourself." "I'll stay here, I need time to think, alone." "Alone?" I said with irony. "Yes, sure, alone." "Why do you say it like that?" "No reason, it just seems curious that this particular weekend you need space. Isn't there anything else you want to tell me?" I saw panic cross his face a second before he composed himself again. "I don't know what you're talking about." I got up and walked to the window, turning my back to him. "Robert, we've been married for 15 years. Do you really think I'm that naive?" "Margaret, I don't know what you're saying." I turned around to face him. "Emily's wedding is this Saturday at my hotel. And you canceled my invitation to take Jessica Miller with you." The color drained from his face. For a moment, it seemed like he would deny everything, but then his shoulders collapsed. "How did you find out?" "Seriously, that's your answer?" I replied with anger. "I'm sorry, I can't explain. Don't insult me with more lies. I know everything, Robert. The 6-month affair, the hotel meetings, the suite you reserved for her in my hotel. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" Robert stood up. His expression shifted from guilt to anger. "You want the truth?" "Yes, I'm with Jessica." "And do you know why?" "Because she makes me feel like a man, not like the failed husband of the great businesswoman Margaret." "Failed?" "Robert, I always supported you." "No," he shouted. "You always overshadowed me. Your hotel this, your hotel that. Do you know what it's like to go to family gatherings where everyone talks about how successful my wife is while they look at me with pity? That's ridiculous." "It's not. My mother is right. A woman should support her husband, not compete with him. Jessica understands that. She admires me, respects me. Jessica is married. She's using you the same way you used me. She's going to leave her husband. We're in love. The word love was the last straw. Love? Do you know what love is, Robert? Love is what I felt for you for 15 years. Love is keeping quiet about your infertility to protect your ego. Love is enduring your family's contempt without complaining. Love is building an empire and never rubbing it in your face even when you didn't celebrate my successes. Don't talk to me about love when you've put your work above everything, he replied. My work? I laughed bitterly. My work paid for your mother's house when she lost hers, and you took the credit. My work paid for Michael's cancer treatment when his insurance didn't cover everything. My work is paying for Emily's wedding because I know she and David don't have enough money. And you know what? You're right. I was a fool. I should have chosen my work over you years ago. Robert turned pale. Margaret, It's over. You want to go to the wedding with Jessica? Go ahead. But there are a few things you need to know. I pulled out my phone and showed him an email. First, the suite you reserved for your mistress was cancelled. There was a payment problem. What? You can't do that. It's my hotel, Robert. I can do whatever I want. I took out another document. Second, our joint accounts have been frozen. My lawyer says it's standard procedure in cases of divorce due to adultery. Divorce? Margaret, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? You cheated on me, humiliated me, excluded me from your family. What did you expect? That I would applaud you? We can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. But don't worry, I'm not going to ruin Emily's wedding. I won't show up there. That will be my gift to her, not having to deal with family drama on her special day. Robert looked relieved for a moment, until I added. Of course, after the wedding, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? You'll see. Now, I suggest you pack your things. I don't want to see you here when I return. Are you throwing me out of my house? It's not your house, Robert. It's in my name. I bought it with my money before we got married. Another detail you conveniently forgot. That night, I left the house and checked into my own hotel. Linda had prepared the presidential suite, the one we reserved for special guests. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the balcony, looking at the city lights. 15 years thrown away on a man who couldn't stand his wife's success. But as I looked at the hotel, my creation, my legacy, I realized something. I hadn't lost those years. I had invested them in building something beautiful, something mine, something no one could ever take away from me. Friday passed in a haze of preparations. As the owner of the hotel, I supervised every detail of Emily's wedding. I wanted everything to be perfect for her despite everything. Linda and the rest of the staff could tell something was wrong, but being the professionals they were, they didn't ask questions. At 3 p.m, I saw Robert arrive on the security cameras. He came with Jessica, both of them laughing as they walked in. She wore a red dress that he had surely bought for her. I watched them as they tried to check in under Robert's last name. He tried to justify the misunderstanding about the suite, but in the end, they had to settle for a standard room. At that moment, Linda came up to me and said, Mrs. Johnson, the family has already started arriving for the rehearsal. And indeed, Mrs. Johnson entered the hotel accompanied by Michael and his family. Emily and David arrived shortly after. From my office, I could see everything without anyone noticing me. The rehearsal went smoothly, although I noticed Emily looking at the door again and again, surely hoping to see me. At one point, I saw her talking to Robert, gesturing energetically. He shook his head, no doubt repeating his lies about my supposed obsession with work. That night, while I was dining alone in my suite, I received a message from an unknown number. I know who you are. Stay away from the wedding tomorrow or there will be consequences. It was Jessica Miller. Apparently, Robert had told her about our confrontation. I replied, "Don't worry. I'm not going to ruin Emily's wedding, but after tomorrow you will both face the consequences." There was no reply. Saturday dawned with radiant sunshine, a perfect day for a wedding. From my suite, I watched the hustle and bustle of preparations, florists placing the final arrangements, the kitchen team fine-tuning the banquet, the musicians testing their instruments. At 2 in the afternoon, Emily arrived with her bridesmaids. I saw her on the cameras as she got ready in the main bridal suite. She looked beautiful, radiant, happy. For a moment, my heart ached thinking I wouldn't see her walk down the aisle, but then I remembered why I wasn't there, and the sadness turned into determination. At 4 in the afternoon, the guests began to arrive, cousins, uncles, family friends, all elegantly dressed, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. I saw Robert receiving guests with Jessica at his side, introducing her as a family friend. The audacity was unbelievable. Meanwhile, Mrs. Johnson seemed in her element, strutting proudly in a clearly new and expensive navy blue dress, surely paid for by Robert with money that should have been ours. At exactly 5 o'clock the ceremony began. From my balcony I could hear the music, the murmurs, and even some emotional sobs. I also cried, not only for what I had lost, but for the broken dreams and the innocence that would never return. The reception started at 7 in the evening. Music filled the air, laughter mixed with conversations. In a moment of weakness, I went down to the kitchen through the service entrance. The chef, who had known me for years, was surprised to see me. "Mrs. Johnson, I thought you would be at the party." "Change of plans, Janier. How is everything going?" "Perfect, just as you asked." "The bride is delighted." "I'm glad. Could you save me a piece of cake when they cut it?" "I'll take it to my suite." "Of course, ma'am." I was about to leave when I heard voices approaching. I hid behind a shelf. It was Robert and Jessica. "I can't believe you were married to the owner of this place," she said. "The hotel is impressive." "The hotel, yes," Robert answered bitterly. "But not her." "Come on, don't say that. She must have something special to have built all this. She got lucky, inherited money, and invested it well. Anyone could have done it." The lie was so brazen I almost stepped out of my hiding place. I hadn't inherited enough to buy the hotel. I had worked, saved, taken out loans, and risked everything. "Well," Jessica purred, "now you have me. And when your divorce is finalized, we'll be together officially." About that, Robert looked uneasy. "It could be complicated. Margaret has good lawyers, and you'll need them too. Besides, half of this is hers." "What?" Her voice turned sharp. "Are you telling me you're not going to get anything from the hotel?" "The hotel was before our marriage and it's in her name. Technically, it's not mine." "So what will you have?" "Other things. The house, well, that's in her name too, but we have joint investments." "How much money do you have?" "Just my salary." "Your salary?" Her disdain was obvious. "I left my millionaire husband for you thinking you had something to offer me. I have a lot to give you." "Love." Jessica let out a cruel laugh. "Love? Robert, you're a 45-year-old man with a mediocre salary, no property, and no access to your wife's fortune. What can you offer me? This is over. I'm not wasting my time with a loser who hasn't even secured his future after 15 years of marriage." I heard her footsteps fade away and then a loud thud. Robert had probably taken out his rage on the wall. I waited a few minutes before leaving my hiding spot. Karma, sometimes, takes care of things faster than we imagine. I went back up to my suite and poured myself a glass of champagne. The irony was delicious. Robert had destroyed our marriage for a woman who only wanted him for money he never had. At 10 o'clock, when the party was at its peak, I received a call from Emily. "Margaret, I know you said you wouldn't come, but I need to see you, please. I'm in the rose garden." That garden was a private area of the hotel, my personal refuge. I hesitated for a moment, but her tone sounded so urgent that I went down. I found her sitting on a bench, her wedding dress shining under the moonlight. She had been crying. "Emily, what's wrong? You should be enjoying your party." She stood up and hugged me tightly. "I know everything. David saw Robert and that woman kissing in a hallway. We confronted him. My God, Margaret, I'm so sorry." I hugged her as she sobbed. "It's not your fault, sweetheart." "Yes, it is. I should have defended you when my mother spoke badly of you. I should have realized what Robert was doing. You are my sister, the sister I always wanted, and I failed you." "You didn't fail me, Emily. None of this is your fault." Through tears, she continued. "My mother is furious, but not at you, at Robert. When she found out that the woman was married and that she only wanted him for his money, she nearly had a heart attack. Right now, she's yelling at Robert in front of all the guests." I couldn't help but feel a small amount of satisfaction. Finally, Mrs. Johnson was seeing her perfect son for what he truly was. "Margaret," Emily looked at me with pleading eyes, "could you come in with me, even just for a moment? I want everyone to know you're my family, no matter what Robert has done. Emily, it's your special day. I don't want to ruin it any further." "You wouldn't ruin it, you'd save it. Please." How could I refuse those tearful eyes? I took her hand and we walked into the hall together. Silence fell instantly. All eyes turned toward me. I saw Robert in a corner, his shirt wrinkled and his expression defeated. Mrs. Johnson stood nearby, her face hardened with shame and fury. Jessica Miller had disappeared. Emily took the microphone. "Family, friends, I want you all to know that Margaret is and always will be my sister. She is the owner of this beautiful hotel that opened its doors for our wedding. She is an extraordinary woman who has endured more than anyone should. And if anyone has a problem with her presence here, they can leave." The applause began timidly, first with David, then his parents, then friends, until the entire hall erupted in applause. I saw tears on many faces, even on Michael's. Then Mrs. Johnson slowly approached. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't see contempt in her eyes, but respect and shame. "Margaret," she said in a whisper, "I have no words to apologize. I was a fool, a bitter woman who didn't know how to value the jewel my son had by his side. I poisoned myself with my prejudices and poisoned my son too. I'm sorry." It was more than I ever thought I would hear from her. "Mrs. Johnson, I appreciate your words, but the damage is already done." "I know," she replied, "and I understand if you never forgive me. But I want you to know that now I recognize everything you did for this family. Michael told me about the treatment, about the house. You are a better person than any of us deserves." I walked away without answering. I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never would be. The rest of the night passed in a kind of haze. I danced with David, talked with some guests, smiled for the photos. Robert disappeared at some point and, honestly, I didn't care. At midnight, when the party was ending, Emily hugged me tightly. "Thank you for everything, Margaret, for the hotel, for being here, for being who you are." "You will always be my sister, Emily," I replied, "no matter what happens with Robert." "And what's going to happen with the divorce?" "My lawyers will take care of it, don't worry. You just enjoy your honeymoon." The following months were a whirlwind of legal and emotional battles. Robert tried to fight for a share of the hotel, claiming that he had contributed, emotionally, to my success. His own lawyers laughed when mine presented evidence of his adultery, security footage, testimonies from several wedding guests. In the end, not only did he get nothing, but he also had to pay me compensation for the expenses of his mistress that he had charged to our joint credit cards. Jessica Miller, meanwhile, went back to her husband, who apparently forgave her in exchange for a very strict post-nuptial agreement. Robert was left alone, living in a one-bedroom apartment, with his reputation ruined both professionally and socially. Mrs. Johnson tried to reach out several times. She sent me apology letters, flowers, even showed up at the hotel once, but I wasn't ready to resume that relationship. Maybe I never would be. Surprisingly, Michael became an unexpected ally. He asked for forgiveness for the years he had been complicit and supported me during the divorce process, testifying about Robert's lies. Emily and I kept our bond stronger than ever. She and David come to the hotel for dinner once a month, and when they announced her pregnancy, I was the first to know. I will be the godmother of their baby, that niece or nephew I never thought I'd have. Today, I am better than ever. The Hope Boutique Hotel continues to grow. We just opened a second location in Miami. Besides, I am dating someone new, an architect I met during the expansion. He is kind, confident, and most importantly, he celebrates my achievements instead of feeling threatened by them. Sometimes I think about those 15 years with Robert. I don't consider them wasted time but an investment in learning. I learned that love is not enough if it is not accompanied by respect. I learned that one-sided sacrifices don't build marriages, they destroy them. I learned that a successful woman should never dim her light so that an insecure man can feel comfortable. And you? What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had a partner who couldn't handle your success? I'd love to read your experiences in the comments. If this story reminded you of something you lived through, write it down. You are not alone. Sometimes, the best revenges are not the ones we plan, but the ones life itself carries out. The last time I saw Robert was a week ago. He was at the cafe across from my hotel, sitting alone, staring at the building I built while he built lies. Our eyes met. He raised his hand in a timid greeting. I simply turned around and walked back into my hotel, my life, my future. Because, at the end of the day, the best revenge was not taking anything away from him, but showing him everything he lost because of his ego and his stupidity. Showing him that I didn't need him to be successful, fulfilled, and happy. My payback was living my best life while he drowned in the consequences of his decisions. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. In the comments, tell me, have you lived through something similar? Which country are you watching from? I read everything you write because each story reminds me that we are not alone in these struggles. Everyone, thank you for listening to my story. Remember, never make yourself smaller for anyone. Your light doesn't go out just because others can't stand it. Shine, shine brightly, and let those who can't handle it put on sunglasses. Until the next story. I am Margaret, reminding you that the best revenge is always to live well, live happily, and live without looking back.